Hey everybody, it's me again, making another video. Before you start to worry, I don't anticipate making this like a regular thing. I don't know for sure at this point, but I did have just a few more thoughts I want to get out there and share. So I wanted to do another video. I also wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching my previous video. Truly, that does mean a lot to me, that you'd spend all that time listening to me and for your comments, for reaching out, all the feedback, sharing your thoughts with me. That was awesome. So appreciate that. And also, before I go on and get into some important stuff here, or things that I feel are important, I do want to apologize about something in my previous video. I mentioned that I would be joking a lot in that video, and then went on to deliver an hour straight of like no joking at all. I think I assumed I would joke just based on like the pattern of my entire life. So I'm not going to make any predictions like that about, this video. So sorry for that. I'm also, being opportunistic here in making these videos. I'm being opportunistic on purpose. I'm taking advantage of a moment where things are right now, where things are being examined, and talked about, things that I care about and have talked about for a long time. People are asking questions, people are reevaluating things. So we're at this like important crossroads that I just don't want to blow past because these are things I've been thinking about, talking to a lot of you guys about. You've been talking to me about this stuff for many, many years. So I'm just taking advantage of this moment by doing some of these videos, having some of these conversations with you guys. I've been talking about a lot of this stuff that I've mentioned in my previous video, and I'll mention in this video, including concerns about Shawn specifically for a while now. I haven't been like as public, I guess, as this, but that kind of goes along with taking advantage of the moment we're in and just opening up the conversation a bit more broadly. But when everything kind of surfaced more openly and globally a couple weeks ago, I guess I wasn't shocked, and I didn't even view it as like bad news. Obviously, the content of some of the stuff that is being talked about and discussed are bad things that have happened for sure, with some bad people doing bad things. But when the news kind of broke more publicly, I thought finally, like, we can address some of this stuff. I think that's really good, So I want us all to kind of remember that going through, what we're going through and with these conversations and this examining and all this stuff this is good. Like, we're getting rid of this bad stuff that has to be dealt with now and should have been dealt with a long time ago. But whatever, we're here now. We need to make inroads to make positive change now. But it's good that we're actually talking about this now. I feel emboldened to do multiple videos and other people are talking about it. It's going to be difficult because for many of us, maybe we thought things were good, or we thought that person was good, or that leader was great and made all the right decisions. And now we're kind of just going through, just trying to figure that out, right? Or exposing that somebody we thought was good is not very good and shouldn't be listened to or platformed. So I do want to say, too, I have empathy for those of you out there that are, shocked and confused and surprised and betrayed. So I don't want to make the impression like there's no room for that. There's a lot of room for people that are like just realizing a lot of this stuff now. So I want to specifically make space for that, even though I am coming from a slightly different perspective. And by slightly, I mean majorly. But I know where that shock or like that feeling betrayed comes from. It comes from you guys having a lot of faith in the speakers themselves and these people that seem to be bad actors that you thought were amazing, gifted, awesome people and awesome, gifted, amazing leaders platforming those people. You just had a lot of, just good will and trust and it comes from a place of actually just believing in people. That's a good thing. What does that say about me? So when I talk about like knowing and certain people were bad actors, or Shawn in particular, right? I went into like how it was obvious because I'll play the other side of that too. If you had looked into it, it would I could easily, and many people out there could easily, in a couple minutes, show you some obvious things that would pretty much seal the deal and show you that, just like they did with the leaders, show you that it's demonstrably fraudulent in a pretty definable way. But when I'm saying that, I get that sounds off-putting maybe to some of you too. Like, well, it was obvious, or I knew a long time ago. But there's a couple specific reasons why I made those statements in my previous video about, me knowing a while back or this. And one of those reasons is just I wanted just a tiny bit of credibility, I guess, in the many, many voices that are out there now talking about, oh, this person, that person. And, I want to have a little bit of credibility to them. I'm not just like piling into the conversation now. Everybody's jumping on board and taking this person down or saying this about that person. Like, this is something, if you know me and we're close enough that I share my unfiltered opinions of things, you'll know that I've had these fairly consistent opinions on this and Shawn specifically. Another reason I bring up, like, me knowing and my friends knowing, and I showed like some of those text messages or some of my posts from, going back to 2016 and years ago, like between me and some friends or posts I made. I wanted to show that I'm not special, and certainly my friends aren't special. We're just people of average, or in some of my friends' cases, below average intelligence. We're just regular people that could spot things. And so that was another reason I wanted to bring this up, was because, like, how, and many other people could spot things in not just Shawn. Remember, this isn't just Shawn. Shawn's the best example we have right now, and he's kind of like the example a lot of people are focused on. But we could see problems with Shawn and some others that the apostolic, prophetic, NAR global leadership, the global movement, they couldn't see, but yet was glaringly obvious to many other people. So like that just is like a point of like, like what is that? Like, what's going on there? And it's just something I'm just trying to lean into and figure out, like, what is that? What would cause these very wise, like, global leaders that are apostles and prophets and speakers and pastors and teachers over huge amounts of people, tons of people look up to those people and, look to them for guidance and wisdom and all this. Like, what would cause, and I'm talking about the whole gamut of leaders in this movement, what would cause them to be seemingly blind to false prophetic words, false giftings, moral failures that are kind of known throughout the community, just bad actors in various ways. And again, not just talking about Shawn, because there's a whole bunch of people that kind of fit into that realm. These names are coming up here and there and have been out there for a while. And even decades before these people, there were other people doing very similar things. You can find out if you care. But there's been like this pattern of people abusing prophetic, abusing God's name, living with these moral failings that are hurting other people within these communities. So what causes a leadership structure to just either not see it, or just worse, see it and then not do something about it, right? Both those things are kind of troubling to me and to all of us, that are kind of invested in this conversation and invested in this movement, this culture, right? So I think, and imagine this, like, I was maybe not going to share this, but like, this is just where my mind goes with some of this stuff. And this is why I'm having these conversations and just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there. But imagine like the conferences and the, just all the times over the decades, right? With people like Shawn and some of the other ones that are doing some of the stuff, faking prophetic words or faking miracles, living with moral failures. And the leaders are doing conferences with these people, prophetic conferences where they're all hearing from God, and, God's telling you what to say and what songs to sing or what message to preach, and you giving you prophetic words, but then you're introducing with glowing terms like these speakers that have just gone through the last half hour, an hour of faking prophetic words. But God doesn't speak to you that, by the way, those were all fraudulent words. Those were all pulled off of social media. Those were all pulled from the prayer cards, right? That's another one a bunch of these people have been doing, but you're not getting that. Okay, I know people might not like me even going there, but I'm like, maybe it just exposes that the personal private revelation and that culture of personal private revelation that is so pervasive and perverse sometimes. It's so perverse and pervasive in our culture, but it's very curiously not dependable in a lot of settings. There's seemingly no like guardrails or discernment in place. In fact, our culture and our core values within the culture seem to be working against discernment or holding the prophetic or miracles or some of these people to a reasonable standard. And so that was just kind of like an example I've been like kind of kicking around in my head. Is like if people are leading a prophetic conference next to a person faking prophecy and they're hearing very clearly and they're saying, well, God just said this, and on the way to the conference, God told me to say this, and God told me to speak on this, and God told me when I'm done here to turn left out of the parking lot. And again, the point in this whole thing right here isn't to say God doesn't speak to people. That's crazy. No, it's maybe difficult to hear or subjective, or maybe we shouldn't put so much weight on it if you just went through decades of ministering with this person that was faking or was living in moral failure and God's telling you all these things, but not that. How useful is it? I'm just asking. And I've been asking myself this, and if you prophesy who's going to win an election, which is a coin toss in a lot of cases, 50-50, and you go, oh, it's going to be Hillary, and then Trump wins, you go, well, how useful is that after the fact to read it? Well, she was, but then God relented and he got in, or Trump's going to win and then Biden gets in. Well, technically Trump did win. It's just they rigged the thing. Like, how useful is even some of this stuff? Are these things working for us if we're not able to, really clearly express like what God's saying? All right, I'm going to move on because I'm confusing myself a little bit. I'm just throwing out a bunch of thoughts here. And if it wasn't so out of control and such a focus, I wouldn't bring it up as much as I do. But it's just causing so many dang problems, I think. And our lack of being able to discern and interact with reality, it all kind of puts us, also another thing I've been thinking about, it puts us in kind of an emperor has no clothes scenario, right? Where people do have to kind of go along with it in the culture. People, pray for a miracle, which sometimes happens. Like, thank God, like the people get healed or some miraculous thing happens. That is so awesome. But a lot of times if it doesn't happen, there's this like pressure to pretend like it does. Like, I think one of the examples that came up in the videos was like a woman who they said her toes grew back, but they don't want to show it, and it looks like they didn't, but so that causes like some confusion, like but we have to like pretend like, but they definitely did, and like the testimony is they did. Or somebody prophesies, Trump's gonna win, and he doesn't, and then we have to just pretend like, well, that was still accurate. Or people all the time giving words of knowledge, giving prophetic words that aren't true, that don't come true, or the word of knowledge is not true, but we just have to pretend like it's true. And or we can observably watch somebody like a Shawn Bolz, to pick on him again, faking things, and we go, just sit there and go, yay, this is awesome. But if you're onto the emperor not having clothes, if you're like the person that can kind of see like, oh, but that thing that you just prophesied, this event's going to happen, that didn't happen, it starts to have that feeling of, what are we doing, faking, pretending, going along with? It's because we don't have a system that encourages healthy discernment, healthy questions, not out of control skepticism and saying it's all fake. No, but because we're so binary, it has to be this or that, we have to just sit there and watch these people that give confoundingly weird revelatory statements, or statements that it doesn't matter if it's true or not, just like a weird, personal revelation or an amazing personal revelation, and we just go, yep, I guess we just got to believe that one, or we just got, yep, we got to just go along with it, because there's no system that says, well, we'll see, the miracle didn't happen, like, man, we'll try again, or we have to just go, it did happen. You just don't realize it happened, but it actually did happen. Like, we create these theologies that just continue to emphasize, like, no, the emperor has on a beautiful regal outfit, and it's amazing, and it's awesome, and it's like, wow. But I really wish, like, that prophetic word, like, actually meant something to me, because they got all these things off. It's like, no, like, don't go there. Did you see how amazing the emperor's clothes are? Anyways, but I want to keep this on us. I really don't want this video or any of my thoughts to, like, just be like, oh, look at these leaders, how bad they are. Like, look at what these leaders have done, or these bad actors have done. This isn't about critiquing or criticizing leaders. It's about what's in our culture, from leaders to us regular people, like, that allows for some of these things to persist, and not just persist, but, like, really be encouraged and just allowed. Like, are we gullible as a people, as a movement? Are we willfully ignorant? Like, we don't want to know. We actively want to stay blinded to whatever these things are, that might be wrong, that might be off, a fraud, a miracle that is a fake miracle, or a prophetic word or a personal private revelation that's just out there, or doesn't come true. Like, do we want to stay blind? Are we complicit? Some people are claiming that leaders are complicit in the cover-up, or complicit in allowing these bad actors to do things. Or on the other side, are we too gracious? Right? There's also that kind of core value that's put out there by some of these leaders that are just really, really heavy on just, no, we just always extend grace, always extend grace, always extend grace, to potentially the peril of certain people. So what are the core values and the core principles that we have in place that are working against us? Because that seems to be, like, the conversation that a lot of people are having, that I am kind of having, is what are these, like, predominant core values, and are they working against us? Because I do believe it seems like they are in a lot of these circumstances. And one thing I'm kind of concerned about, I was concerned about this after Bethel gave their, like, apology kind of repentance sermon a couple weeks ago with Dan Fairley, Chris, and Bill. And even just, like, a lot of the conversations that are happening out there, is, like, the whole focus of that, like, apology, which was very emotional, and just, I'm not criticizing that they did that, but they only talked about Shawn Bolz in that sermon, and a lot of conversations have been just about Shawn, and that's why I'm so quick and repeatedly saying it's not just about Shawn. Again, Shawn is beside the point. He's just the most obvious example of, somebody doing something within this movement that was known, that was damaging. He hurt people. He really affected people's lives in a bad way. We knew about it. Nothing was done for so long. So it's a good example, but it's not the only thing. What is in the culture and the core values that allowed for that? Like, bad actors are going to be bad actors. We as leaders and people in a culture, on the other hand, in a church, have to have systems in place and core values in place that are going to protect, especially the most vulnerable people, and protect the integrity of our movement over protecting the ministry of a bad actor, or the brand of a ministry, the brand name, So I don't want to just say, well, Shawn, we found him out. Good. Now we can move on and get back to business. I hope it's not get back to business, honestly. Again, that's where I'm like, this is a good thing that we're talking about this stuff. This is a good thing that these things are coming out and these difficult conversations are happening. It's been too long, for sure. So, like, why did Shawn and these other people, I'm not saying the other people's names, because some of them seem quite litigious, from what I'm told, but and again, it doesn't matter. There's just the people out there that are coming up in the spotlight, who've been under the spotlight, who are now under a microscope, right? Like, how did they become so influential in the first place? Like, that's curious to me. What are we drawn to about these people and like their ministries and their performance and their books? Like, it just seems a bit like our priorities just are off, because some of them, again, to me just seem so like obviously not attractive to like sit under and learn from, and like the messages are just off, the package is just off. Like what is the appeal of getting like trivial information from you, quite obviously from a social media profile in many cases, but getting that, but listening to somebody who doesn't preach the gospel, right? What's the infatuation with prophets who prophesy but never accurately or never usefully, like but who sell us books and sell us conferences repeatedly about how to prophesy accurately when it's just not happening with them. And again, it's fine if they don't get it right, I guess. I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not like really strict. Like, if it's wrong once, never do it again. But we don't have any systems in place where we acknowledge it's wrong, that they've gotten 17 in a row wrong, and yet they're now holding a conference about how we should prophesy all the time to everybody and just do it whether they get it right or wrong. Like, it's just the overemphasis on it, and without any guardrails or healthy discernment is the problem, if you can hear me saying that. Like, The Simpsons TV show has a much higher batting average than most of the famous platformed prophets out there. Like, that's just the sad truth. Like, they're more specific and accurate in future telling, like prophecy type stuff than many of the biggies. And if I'm wrong, if there are some names out there, and I've searched, I've looked, I've tried to like figure out like who are the prophets that are saying things like, accurately, that aren't just like I prophesied that a shift was coming and then COVID happened. See, like, told you guys. It's like, no, I want to know who are the voices we should be listening to that are really tuned in and are accurate, and we can really glean from, that are useful, that isn't just abstract personal private revelation. That it's like, how useful is this stuff? Again, the point I'm getting back to is what are we attracted to as a people? Because it seems like it's a lot of that, but not a lot of like core, solid gospel teaching. Like, I just mean like the core truths and principles from Scripture, like foundational ways to live your life, like through that lens. Like, that stuff doesn't seem to be really in the equation much at all. And that's kind of another, like, it's not really that's not being talked about in this conversation specifically. Some people are bringing that up, but we're mostly just trying to like weed out some of the charlatans or bad actors. But I'm like, they're again kind of beside the point. But what is the attraction to them, and not to something that seems much more useful and something you can really like hold on to, as opposed to a personal private revelation that may or may not be true? That's okay to hold on to with an open hand. But if they've just, again, said 10 other things that weren't true, but then you're changing your life, you're leading your whole life, your marriage and your ministry based on this other word from the same person, that just might be it's just an interesting way to do this life and to live out this faith. So, what beliefs and practices are we following that also say just don't question anything and don't say anything if somebody seems off? Don't think for yourself. Don't listen to like your own discernment. Got to listen to the leaders, or just trust these people. Like, and because here's the thing: if you're waiting on leaders, and I mean just any of the leaders that you look up to in your stream, in this stream, all the leaders, if you're waiting on them to tell you who's a good person to listen to, or what book you should read, or whose prophecy you should follow, I would say don't. At this point, don't depend, and don't put your faith and trust in your relationship, your relationship with God. Don't put that through another person, because then when that person doesn't use wisdom, it's going to affect you, right? What's been demonstrated repeatedly, it seems, in this culture with a lot of the top leaders is they are probably not going to tell us who's safe and who might be dangerous or in error. And that's based it seems like by design, based, like they specifically have operated that way in this stream based on the core values that they follow and encourage us to follow. So unless that changes, unless the system, the structure, the core values kind of change and tweak into a more healthy way, I think we need to figure things out ourselves individually and as a community, with each other. And that's what I'm trying to be here for in my small way. And I think a lot of the people and voices out there are trying to figure that out too. And so it's like we just got to be wise and diligent with like who we're giving our attention to and who we're being wowed by and whose ministries we're platforming, on our own, and just focus on things that are actually helpful and useful and just solid stuff, and just not foolishness, not getting swept up into foolishness, and not waiting for a church or a leader to say, hey, by the way, don't listen to this person, because it might be very late, if ever. So a lot of these video people, I call them the video people, right? The online voices who are out there trying to figure out, who is the good actors and who are the bad actors and kind of what happened. I really feel like there's a lot of really good, honest, helpful people out there in that space, and most of them I feel like are trying to make things better for this church, for us, for the movement, whatever you want to call it. Some people are just piling on and taking advantage of what's happening and trying to beat people down or just burn certain things down. There are some people voices out there that are like that. So again, you have to use discernment. But a lot of these video people, I think are really decent people that have good hearts and seem to be doing some really good work. So I've been encouraged by that. I've actually been in touch with some of these video people and online voices these past couple weeks, trying to figure things out as well. And, just lending my voice a tiny bit and lending my ear a bit, and just being willing to go through these conversations and try to, again, figure out what's happening so that we can move on and get to a better place. In the meantime, I'm doing a couple of these videos. I'm taking my thoughts a little bit more public with you guys. As we all try to navigate through this, for a time, I'm doing this. I don't want to live in this space forever, and I don't think those video people and online voices do either. But I am living in this weird tension where I just want to figure things out in a healthy way. And I'm not an insider and I'm not an outsider to this. And I could be either one, I suppose, right? Like I could choose to be on team whatever, or team Bethel would make a lot of sense, or, because of some of my concerns, I could be team not Bethel. But that's what people are doing, it seems, is they're choosing teams and choosing sides. And as I said in my last video, I don't like that team thing, because when you form a team identity, that's when an identity bias comes in and it skews objective thinking and objective perspective, because I just got to enforce what my team enforces. I just got to believe what my team believes, or I got to go against that team because I'm on the other team. And I just really try not to ever do that, and I just don't think it's healthy. So, but it would be easy for me to be on Team Bethel just because of my past and my connection points. And even just a couple days ago, or I guess last week, I was on a Zoom call with Chris Valentin with some other Bethel leaders and some Bethel alumni, and I liked that. I liked hearing what Chris had to say, and I'm not going to share much about that because it was more just for that group, but there's a connection point there, and that's real to me. It's it's not just out there on the internet. Oh man, this church out there is doing stuff. It's no, I have these connection points that are actually and my past and just past interactions. And I've mentioned on the last video, and a lot of you might know, some of the people that are absolutely closest to me in my life, my closest friends, is Bill Johnson's family, right? So that's a connection point. I currently have a lot of Bethel and BSSM friends that have gone through there or are connected there still in my community. There's a lot of connection points, right? I like Bill, I like Chris, and the leaders at Bethel. I like most of the leaders at Bethel. So I want to get all that out there. This is not binary. It's not I like or I don't like. I want to tear down or I want to build up. I'm just going to admit I'm confused by them. I'm confused by this situation. I'm confused by not just Bethel leaders, but their friends, right? In this whole movement, the NAR, the charismatic stream, all those leader names that are being thrown out there right now. Like, I am confused by them. I'm confused by a lot of the actions that have happened. And we as people, I've talked about this a bunch before in various settings, we don't like this kind of tension, or dare I say nuance, which I've also spoken to a lot of people about. We don't do nuance well. But I can like people and also not trust those people in any kind of situation or circumstance. I can think someone made a very bad leadership decision, but I can think they're not a bad person, right? Or I can even like someone who is a bad person, right? Probably have many people in our lives that we really love or like, but we know they're just not in a good place. Like, it's when we conflate liking someone and loving someone to having to agree with them and endorse them and defend them at all times. That's where things get tricky, right? And so I just try not to live in that space of conflating those ideas, right? There's a podcaster I listen to that says, I think about people the way they make me think about them. It's a very kind of just direct statement. It just makes sense to me. Like, when people in my life do things that make them more trustworthy, they're making me think that about them. If they do actions that are violent or dangerous or just confusing, I'm going to think those things about those people. So I think about people the way they make me think about them. Because if I didn't, then I would be probably insane, right? If I just randomly thought just love this person. Oh, no, now I don't, for no reason, right? That's a pretty obvious, thing to put out there, but I don't know. I just think in this moment, it kind of needs to be said. Like, I'm just thinking about people the way that they're causing me to think about them. And my views can change on people. My views on what's healthy or not healthy, or what's a good system or core value can change over time too, right? Like, I liked hearing what Chris said on that Zoom call, but like, also some of it was confusing to me. There's things that, obviously the Bethel leaders who I like and just have a lot of connection to and desire to like they've done things that are making that difficult in a lot of these scenarios, like really difficult. And I've personally found information that just doesn't look good. It doesn't match their story. It doesn't match the timeline. It just contradicts things. And I've personally seen, again, not just out there. So this is not distant online. Somebody discovered something. Somebody did this video. Oh, you got to check out this video. I've looked into things myself, and I'm personally finding things that just don't make sense and don't add up. And I just have to be integrous with myself. I have to be integrous with you guys. I have to just be honest with my thoughts, because, again, I don't want to get into this emperor has no clothes thing where it's like I see something that doesn't make sense, and I go, oh, that makes a ton of sense. You got to love whoever made his robe. It's incredible. The colors are so bright. I can't do that, right? So I'm just kind of in this weird tension. Like I said, I've seen things, and I've also seen those very same things vanish off the internet like the next day. And I'm like, that seems to be what they're talking about with like cover-up culture. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look like transparency. That doesn't look like wisdom and honesty and trust being built, right? And I've been in touch with some of my other Bethel alumni and just trying to, again, ask questions, figure things out, like, oh, what happened when, or what happened in this situation? And things are, I'll just keep saying the word confusing, because things are confusing that have come up from those conversations with people that have all looked to Bethel and these other leaders and these other, speakers that are out there. We all looked up to them for guidance and wisdom and direction in various times of our life. So again, it's not like we don't like those people and we're trying to bring it down. In fact, I've thought about the story in the Bible of David with King Saul. Like, again, I'm not looking to expose and make people look bad or criticize, but so the story about David and King Saul that I kind of think of is like, Saul thought that David was trying to kill him and trying to take him out, which is also kind of the same thing as killing. But he thought there's like this conspiracy in Saul's mind about David and David's intentions. But David honestly was trying to honor Saul, and he had no ill will towards Saul, but Saul had the demons in his mind that were just like really trying to convince him that David was a threat, right? So one night, Saul's sleeping, and David cuts off a piece of Saul's garment, right? And then shows it to him the next day. David felt pretty bad, it seemed, about this, but he was like, look it, like, I do not want to kill you. I could have killed you last night, but like, I want to honor you. Like, I have no ill will towards you. So stop thinking I'm trying to hurt you. So I kind of feel like that with some of the stuff I say is like, this doesn't look good, or I found something that doesn't look good, but I'm not saying that to take anybody out. I want to honor, but I also want to honor my mind and my community and my belief system and what's right and what's true. I want to pursue truth and health and not just pursue people or ministries or speakers or platforms or ideas if they are not healthy and not helpful. So I'm getting my thoughts out there. You guys can give me thoughts back about it. We'll have this conversation, but this is just where I'm at. I'm also like accepting and choosing to be in a place of confusion, right? That's one thing I wanted to say as well. Like, as opposed to just going to anger, vindictiveness, or any other like kind of more those emotions, like, I'm just going to remain confused for this time, open to kind of hearing things out. But like, that's an active decision I'm making, is like, oh, I'm confused. This looks bad. This seems hurtful. This guy was bad for so long. How could you not say this or do that? Like, wow, that's like really confusing. But my trust has been shaken in many ways by many different people in this movement, and for a long time, and even more recently as more conversations are had and things come up and things don't look good. But, you know, I'm choosing to not just jump to one extreme or the other, but stay in a place of kind of like intentional confusion. To me, that seems to work until it doesn't, but that's just where I'm at. I've seen people, even on that Zoom call or just online, we see this a lot. People are going from either like, you know, one extreme to the other. Like, oh, like this leader puts out a statement and people go like, hey man, like this is amazing. Like everything's good now. I knew you were like the best leader ever. Or they're like, nope, that's not good enough. We got to burn the whole thing down. You're done. We're coming after you. It's like there's those two like kind of main reactions, it seems. I kind of find myself in the middle, not just to be in the middle, but it's just where I end up a lot of times. Here's the thing, too. I've thought about this the last couple weeks. I have publicly and privately, but I've publicly defended Bethel, and specifically like the NAR as like a structure. I'll tell a quick story about that. Like probably 10 years ago or so. So to kind of put in more context, there's a Christian author, speaker, podcaster who I really just have looked up to for many years, and kind of like a mentor of mine, but he's in a different stream, much different stream. So again, it's not about agreement, but I get a lot from listening to this guy. And he had on his podcast like 10 years ago, Doug Geivett and Holly Pivik, who are loud voices out there against the NAR and against Bethel specifically. And they were promoting their book, which was like how bad the NAR is and how bad the charismatic leadership is. There's no structure. It's not healthy, blah, blah, blah. So as a good like Bethel person, whatever, the next week I go on this podcast, this guy who I really like. We just come from different streams. And so I defend the NAR, of course, defending Bethel. You got it all wrong. It's not what you think. And, you know, these guys are great guys, great leaders making great decisions. And, you know, so now looking back, where I do think like the NAR clearly has tons of issues. There's gaping holes. There's just like no structure to it. It's just not working out. So maybe I should go back on the podcast and be like, actually, forget what I said. Not that anybody remembers anyways. But my whole point in saying that is like, if I can publicly defend and privately defend, can I publicly question or share frustration and privately share frustration or questions? Because I don't know like what kind of culture wouldn't allow for that, but I think it probably starts with like the first four letters of the word culture, most likely. Anyways, we're putting a lot of trust in these leaders, especially when they're called like apostles. Like, I didn't ask them to be called apostles. I didn't ask them to be global leaders and prophets over the whatever region or societal stuff, like apostles over movements and teachers over, like, this is a structure they've stepped into. They feel it's a calling, but we put a lot of trust and a lot of weight on people, and they're putting a lot of, pressure and authority on themselves when they say, like, we're not just a local pastor, we are a big time leader, and we're platforming other big time leaders, and there's a system here, there's a structure there. So when you put that much trust in a leader, it's sometimes suspicious if the core values and the core principles say, but we have this other culture and principle here that says, like, don't question, that's bad, don't dishonor, we can only honor. We don't expose things because it's could be for this reason, it's bad for the movement. Like, putting a lot of trust in these leaders to have our best in mind, right? Look at how many other leaders that have fallen have abused that system, when people put such trust and such faith in them with core values that are emphasizing that, authority. That is when that 4-letter word that I was alluding to kind of like can take place, when it becomes that kind of an environment. We see that in cults, right? Is they use, like, well, God said, and they use authority, they use the core values and core principles to make all these rules that say don't think, don't question, don't fall out of line, or else. Again, I'm staying in a place of confusion and trusting, like, leaders have the best intentions in mind. So when it looks like they don't, I'm like, what's going on? So couple of the main points I wanted to hit that I've taken probably way too long to get to, but I'm talking, I'm processing, I'm venting in some ways, but hopefully not just venting. Hopefully this is somewhat, calculated and cohesive to somebody. The core values are really being addressed right now, and they've been kind of problematic to a lot of Bethel BSSM like alumni and people in the culture and the stream for a long time. It's namely the culture of honor, right? That's been a tough one for a lot of people. I can speak to that because I've heard these conversations. I've had these struggles. Like, culture of honor, taken at face value, is maybe good, but the way it's actually practiced and played out, it's got some issues. It seems it's got some potential bad side effects. Another, like, common phrase within especially the Bethel community, because again, that's my connection point, right, is finding the golden people. Finding the golden people, when healthy, means we look for what God's doing in their lives, or just kind of affirming like everybody's intrinsically valuable. But if we're not careful, it means ignore red flags because maybe there's some anointing there, or ignore red flags because we don't ever say anything bad. Like, again, calling out the gold, finding the golden people can be used for either good or misaligned and abused means. Like, we don't ever call out bad things in people. Well, where do you get that principle from? Like, how is that helpful to the whole? Because it seems to just be supporting the platformed celebrity leaders, or at least the leadership structure, at the cost of the people when misapplied. There's other statements that aren't like official, like core values or principles, but they're just thrown around in the movement a lot in these streams, is like, drink, don't think, which is very super powerful, even though I could barely say it, just because it rhymes. So since it rhymes, it's got a lot of like juice to it. So even if that phrase is meant more like metaphorically, it just discourages discernment. It encourages the emperor having no clothes type environment where it's like, well, this doesn't really seem to be adding up. It's like, again, it might have a great meaning to somebody originally, but in practice, are these things helping us as a culture? Bethel talks a lot about shouting what other people whisper, right? So you have all these other streams, and the people that are kind of criticizing our stream, they don't focus on some of these things, like really going after revival, or signs and wonders, and personal prophetic revelation, all that stuff. They acknowledge, like, we shout what the rest of the church whispers. And again, maybe that's okay, but like, maybe there's a reason not to shout what others whisper. Like, it sounds bold, but maybe there's a reason to whisper some of these things, or just have more balance or discernment, or systems and structures in place. So it's like, I keep hammering that point. I think you're probably getting sick of me saying that kind of stuff, but like, that just seems to be clearly where we need to go with some of this stuff, and not just being this like extreme reaction, which I talked about in my last video, to like this other side. Like, oh, the Baptists, they whisper this, so we're going to just scream it as loud as we can and let it go wild. It's like, maybe not the best idea we've ever had. I'm not saying these values are evil, but they can be used for bad. They can be used in evil ways if not carefully kind of regulated or watched, or like, just discerned, right? And in many instances and in situations, it seems like these values are protecting the leadership structure at the cost of the people. And that's what I think the people, us regular people, are now like just really trying to like make sure is not happening, whether intentionally or unintentionally, doesn't matter, right? So I want to end on this kind of one other thought I've been thinking about a lot the last like week or couple weeks here, to bring it to a scriptural example. That's always probably a good thing to do when we're talking about church matters, right? This might be the most important point of my whole video, and probably maybe my best point, which probably is not saying much, but it might be helpful to somebody as we kind of work through some of these thoughts and the structure and looking for guidance. And if we are a church and Christians, like there is a standard we can use like for guiding us and helping with our core principles and values. So Paul says in Galatians, which he starts out Galatians by saying, Paul, an apostle called by God, not by man, which I just thought was funny, because he's like, hey, by the way, I'm not just, my buddies didn't just like call me an apostle. Like I'm actually an apostle. Like there's a responsibility that comes with that, and authority. That's an aside. But he says this is what I want to get at. He says in Galatians 1, he goes, hey, if we, meaning Paul or his NAR buddies, right, his ministry, the other authorities, the other leaders, right, says if we ever come to you, or how about this, even if an angel comes, there's a supernatural occurrence and an angel comes, or if I come to you and if I'm preaching another gospel, you should curse me or curse the angel, let them be accursed. So Paul, as an apostle, as the apostle of apostles, and his other, the other people in leadership, and even an angel, he holds to a very, very high standard. There's very well-known leaders out there, speakers, whatever, ministers out there you want to call it, who you can see, maybe seen the videos, maybe seen the clips. They say, and there's a quote, they say, I curse you if you speak against my ministry, right? That's if you have a problem with my ministry, if you question me, if you speak out against me, I curse you. Paul's saying the exact opposite. He says, if I'm ever preaching foolishness, if I ever go astray, curse me. Hold me to the higher standard. And it's just like we got things kind of flipped. He didn't say, don't say anything because it'll be bad for the movement. It's going to be bad for my ministry. It's going to make me look bad. It's going to make all of us look bad if you call me out. He didn't say like, hey, this is going to really affect my book sales. I got this book I'm working on called the Bible. He says, curse me. If I go off track, don't even mess with that. You hold me to a high standard. He didn't say call out the gold or all these things where we go with some of this stuff. I have actually that same person I gave the example of that said like, I curse you if you question me. I guess maybe was cursed by them because like I've questioned their ministry before, and I've kind of been chastised for that. I was just trying to say like, hey, not everything that everybody that's popular says is good to listen to. They might even say one good thing, but if there's foolishness, we just got to learn to discern through that. But that's tough. That we don't like that. But Paul's saying, yeah, you know what? Hold each other and hold the leaders especially to a high standard, so we don't introduce foolishness and error and all that into our church, into our communities, into our stream. So I'm going to end with this. We need to examine whether our core values and our core focus are functioning in a way that protects people and helps people, or does it protect movements, brands, platforms, and protects conference sales and all that. So we need systems, like I've been talking about. We need a system that encourages healthy leaders, healthy speakers, accurate prophetic, actual miracles, and platforming people that actually preach the gospel. And if those things aren't happening, we need core values that lovingly, in a healthy way, challenge those things and cause growth and cause, good discernment to happen. And one last thing before I go, so I don't have any confusion here on this point. Like, I'm not looking for, I'm not doing like witch hunt type stuff or like saying every speaker needs to be theologically like bulletproof and fit perfectly with everything I agree with. And if they don't, then we curse. They're like, no. Like, there's so much grace for different speakers and thoughts and prophetic voices and biblical teachings and theology. Like, but if it's in error or if there's bad actors, we just need systems that can kind of help deal with that. Like if John MacArthur would have been willing to, which he probably wouldn't, but if he was willing to speak at Bethel, I think that would have been awesome. And in a healthy culture, we could even share openly our differences, right? Be like, hey, he believes this and we believe this. We're brothers and we believe this together, and that's great. So it's the platforming of like ridiculous and abusive people, and then the seeming cover up of some of those abuses and ridiculous stuff. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm saying we have to have systems to weed out. Not everybody's got to be like under the microscope at all times. It's just being able to do faith and church and this life and this expression of the Christian faith like in a healthy way that's reasonable and helps people grow and protects people and holds leaders in a healthy way accountable. So I'm still processing all of this, clearly. Appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys listening to me process this and sharing thoughts, and I hope you share thoughts back to me. I'll end with this. Have I said that like 3 or 4 times? We can love people genuinely and truly and deeply and still ask questions and still struggle with things. I believe that. We can honor leaders and still hold them accountable, right? Without dishonoring them. We can value revival, but we can still value integrity at the same exact time. Those things are not opposites, right? So if Paul can say, if I get off track, do not follow me, then nobody, no leader, none of us are beyond examination, beyond questioning, beyond failure. That's not dishonor. That's maturity, that's wisdom, that's health, and that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm looking for, and I know we all are. Thanks for listening.